Reborn. She chose the rich bad boy. My billionaire mentor chose me the very next day. I woke up with my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. Same dorm room. Same cracked ceiling tile above my bed. Same thin sunlight leaking through the blinds. But it wasn't the same day. Not really. It was that day. Capstone pitch day. The day I'd spent 3 years working toward. And the day I'd spent my last life regretting. In my old life, I'd blown off my own prep to help Julian Vance polish his pitch. He'd told me I was the only one who got him. 2 weeks later, he was posing for page 6 with Sloan Armitage while I sat in a studio apartment wondering where I'd gone wrong. Now, I was back, and this time, I wasn't making the same mistake. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. Need you, baby. Library? I stared at it. Baby. Like I was some accessory he kept forgetting in a drawer. My thumb hovered, then typed back. Busy. Good luck. I didn't wait for his reply. I rolled out of bed, pulled on the least wrinkled blouse I owned, and headed out. The hallway smelled like burnt toast and cheap coffee, but I barely noticed. My head was already in the lecture hall. When I got there, Julian was already holding court near the front. Sloan was draped over his arm, like she'd been custom ordered to match his suit. She spotted me and smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. Viv, she said, voice syrupy. We were just talking about how Jules doesn't even need this fellowship. It's cute that you're trying so hard. Though, Julian didn't correct her. He just gave me that lazy grin. The one that used to make my stomach flip. You sure you don't want to run lines with me? You always make it sound better. I'm sure. I said, you'll manage. Sloan arched an eyebrow. She's in a mood today. I'm focused. I said, and walked past them to my seat. The dean, Whitmore, tapped the mic. All right, people, you know the stakes. This isn't just a grade. It's your shot at the Sternbridge Fellowship. Impress the room, especially our guest judge. That's when I saw him, Lincoln Prescott. He was already seated in the back corner, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Tall, dark suit, zero expression. The man didn't blink. He didn't fidget. He just watched. Julian went third. He strolled up, flashed that $1,000,000 smile, and started talking about disrupting legacy systems without explaining what the hell that meant. It was all buzzwords and confidence. Sloan nodded along like he was delivering scripture. When he finished, Prescott didn't clap. He didn't even look at him. Julian didn't seem to notice, or didn't care. Then it was my turn. I stepped up, clicked my first slide, and launched in. No theatrics, just numbers, strategy, and a clear path to scale. I could feel Prescott's eyes on me, sharp, assessing. Halfway through, I caught him leaning forward, just slightly. Afterward, I packed up my notes and headed for the coffee station. Julian materialized beside me. You're really going to play this game today? He asked, voice low. It's not a game. Jules, I said, pouring myself a cup. It's my future. Since when do you care about your future more than us? I turned to face him, since I realized this was mostly just me doing free labor. He laughed, but it sounded thin. Come on, you know I'd take care of you. I know you'd take. That's different. Before he could respond, Sloan slid between us, slipping her arm through his. Leave her, Jules. Some people just aren't built for the big leagues. I sipped my coffee. Good. You'll need the stamina. Her smile twitched. Julian looked like he wanted to say something else. But Dean Whitmore appeared, steering me away with a hand on my elbow. Ms. Carter, he said, pitching his voice low. Mr. Prescott asked about your methodology, specifically your cap table assumptions. I blinked. He did? Very unusual. Whitmore murmured. He doesn't ask questions unless he's interested. Keep that in mind. He drifted off, leaving me standing there. I glanced back at Prescott. He was already gone. No goodbye, no feedback, just gone. By the time I got back to my dorm, the adrenaline had worn off and my hands were shaking. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the dark window. In my last life, I'd spent this night crying into a pint of ice cream, waiting for a text from Julian that never came. This time, I checked my email instead. There it was, a message from a Prescott Global address. Short, clean, no subject line. Ms. Carter, my office, 9 a.m. I closed the email and leaned back against the wall. My heart was still racing, but for a different reason. Last time, I'd waited for someone to choose me. This time, I'd made sure it was the right someone. I just hadn't expected him to notice this fast. I didn't sleep. Not really. I kept replaying the pitch in my head, picking apart every word, every pause, every place where I could have been sharper. By the time my alarm went off at 7, I'd already been awake for 2 hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering if I'd imagined that email. I hadn't. Prescott Global's headquarters ate up an entire block on Park Avenue. I walked in at 8:50, nodded at the security guard, and took the elevator to the 42nd floor. The reception area was all glass and silence. No music, no chatter, just a quiet hum of people who knew they were being paid too much to waste time. Elias Mercer was waiting for me. He didn't stand, didn't smile, just looked up from his tablet and said, "Carter, Mercer." I replied, keeping my voice even. He stood, gesturing toward a set of double doors. "He's expecting you." Inside, Lincoln Prescott was already behind his desk, scanning a document. He didn't look up when I entered, didn't invite me to sit. I stayed on my feet, hands clasped in front of me, and waited. After a full minute, he spoke. "Your cap table assumptions were aggressive. Not a low. Not thanks for coming. Just straight into the kill. They're realistic," I said, "based on current market comps and our projected burn rate." Now he looked up. His eyes were gray, colder than I remembered. "You're assuming a Series A at a $12 million pre-money. That's optimistic for a consumer app with no proprietary tech." "It's not just a consumer app," I said. "It's a platform. And the tech isn't the moat. The data is. We got a pilot group of 5,000 users generating behavioral insights that no one else has. That's what justifies evaluation." He leaned back. "And if your user acquisition cost spikes, then we pivot to B2B licensing. I've already modeled 3 scenarios. Worst case, we break even by month 18. Silence again. He didn't blink, didn't nod, just watched me like I was a problem he was deciding whether to solve or discard. Finally, he said, "Most people bore me by sentence 3. You didn't. I didn't know how to respond to that. So I didn't. You'll come in twice a week." He continued, 7 a.m. We'll go through your models, your assumptions, your logic. If you waste my time, we're done. Understood. You don't ask questions? Should I? A faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, almost a smile. No. He went back to his document. I took that as my cue to leave. As I reached the door, he spoke again. Voice flat. "Dean Whitmore will call. Tell him you're unavailable for comment." I nodded and stepped out. Mercer was still there, tapping something into his tablet. He glanced up. "How'd it go?" "I'm coming back Tuesday." He didn't react, just said, 7 sharp, and returned to his screen. By noon, Julian had heard. I found that out the hard way. He showed up at my dorm, pounding on the door. "What the hell are you doing with Prescott?" he demanded the second I opened it. I stepped aside and let him in. No point having this conversation in the hallway. "My job," I said. "Something you might try." He followed me inside, pacing. "You think he gives a shit about you? You're a project, a toy. He goes through fellows like tissues. Then I'll be the one he doesn't throw away." He stopped, turned to face me. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious. You know Sloane's already posting about us, right? The gala last night? Her dad pulled strings to get me invited. We're basically, save it." I cut in. "I don't care what you and Sloane are doing. I'm not competing for you anymore. Jules, I'm competing for me." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You've changed." "Yeah, I grew up." He left after that, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't bother locking it. Let him stomp off. Let him stew. My phone buzzed. A text from Sloane. Because of course it was. Heard you're playing with the big boys now. Cute. Don't trip. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and drafted a quick email to Prescott. One line, ready for round 2 whenever. His response came 3 minutes later. Tomorrow, 7 a.m. Don't be late. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Outside, the city kept moving, horns, sirens, the distant rumble of the subway. Inside, my heart was finally steady. For the first time since waking up in this recycled life, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. And I wasn't giving it up. Not for Julian. Not for Sloan. Not for anyone. I got to Prescott Tower at 6:30. The lobby was dead quiet, except for the guy at the security desk flipping through something on his phone. He waved me through without looking up. Same elevator. Same reflective doors. Same hollow feeling in my gut that maybe I wasn't over my head. 42nd floor. Mercer was already there. Same spot. Same blank stare. He didn't say good morning. Just nodded at the double doors. He's in. Prescott didn't look up when I walked in. Just kept scribbling in the margin of a printout. I stood there until he decided I existed. Sit, he said without lifting his eyes. I sat, hands flat on my knees, back straight. He finally looked at me. You're early. Didn't want to be late. Punctuality isn't a virtue. It's a baseline. He tossed a printout onto the desk. It was my capstone deck, marked up in red. Walk me through page 7 again. Your churn assumptions. I did. Cold. Precise. No filler. He interrupted twice. Once to challenge a cohort retention curve. Once to question a CAC payback period. I answered both without blinking. When I finished, he leaned back. You rehearsed this? I know my numbers. Good. He reached into a drawer and slid a manila folder across the desk. Standard Sternbridge Fellowship pays $60,000. A reference letter. And access to their alumni brunch. My version pays $200,000. Equity stake in a Prescott-backed incubator. And direct reporting to me for 12 months. I opened the folder. The font was small, but the terms were clear. 12 months of what? Whatever I tell you to do. Market analysis. Competitive teardowns. Sometimes cleaning up other people's messes. He paused. Except, and you don't work on anything else. No side gigs. No consulting for friends. No helping Julian Vance with his pitch decks. I didn't react to the Julian jab. What's the equity? 0.05% in the incubator fund. Vest monthly. If you quit, you walk with nothing. And if I'm fired, same outcome. I flipped to the last page. Signature line. Who's my direct supervisor besides you? Me. Mercer handles logistics. No one else touches your work. IP ownership? Everything you create under this agreement belongs to Prescott Global. Anything you brought in independently stays yours, provided it doesn't conflict. I tap the paper. And if I say no, then you go back to the standard fellowship, if they still offer it. And I forget your name by lunch. He said it flat, like he was discussing the weather. I picked up the pen. Signed my name slow enough to mean it. He didn't smile. Didn't even glance at the signature. Just closed the folder and set it aside. Dean Whitmore will call. Tell him you've accepted a private offer and decline further comment. Done. You start Monday. 7 a.m. Mercer will send the calendar. I stood as I reached the door. He spoke again. One more thing. I turned. Don't expect praise. I don't hand out participation trophies. Wasn't expecting any. Back outside. My phone was already vibrating. Whitmore. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call, unknown number. Probably a reporter. I blocked it. By the time I hit the sidewalk, the news had leaked. Julian texted first. You seriously taking his offer? You realize what this makes you, right? I didn't answer. Sloan's text came next. Congrats on the pity internship. Must be nice buying your way into relevance. I typed back once. Funny, I didn't need a trust fund to get here. Then I blocked her. 2 hours later. Mercer emailed me a calendar invite labeled Team Sync, confidential. I clicked it. Location, Prescott Tower, floor 44. Attendees, me, Mercer, and one other name I didn't recognize, Catherine Reeve, senior partner. That evening, I got another email from a Sternbridge admin account. Subject, review of capstone methodology. Body, Ms. Carter. Concerns have been raised regarding the originality of your capstone research. Please provide supporting documentation by Friday. I stared at it. The playbook was obvious. Sloane's family had connections. They couldn't touch Prescott directly, so they'd go after my academic record. Classic. I forwarded the email to Prescott. No commentary, just a thread. His reply came in under a minute. Noted, Mercer will handle. 5 minutes after that, Mercer emailed the dean directly. I was CC'd. The message was 3 lines. Any further inquiry into Ms. Carter's academic work will be deemed harassment and treated as corporate sabotage. Prescott Global will pursue all legal remedies. E. Mercer Whitmore responded within the hour. Understood. Matter closed. I sat back, letting that sink in. In my old life, I would have spent the night drafting explanations, begging for meetings, proving myself to people who'd already decided I was guilty. This time, I didn't lift a finger. Monday morning, I walked into the team sink 10 minutes early. Catherine Reeve was already there, mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She looked me over once and went back to her phone. Prescott entered exactly at 7. No greeting. He dropped a thin file on the table. Carter, this is your first assignment. Tear down this acquisition target. Financials, leadership, litigation history, everything. I want it by Thursday. Catherine finally looked up. Lincoln, is this necessary? She's a student, not a principal. She's my principal. Prescott said, without looking at her. Cross her. You answer to me. Silence. Catherine's jaw tightened, but she didn't push back. I opened the file. The company name was familiar, a mid-sized logistics firm with a habit of undercutting competitors. I'd actually studied them last semester. Prescott stood. Questions? I met his eyes. Do you want the pretty version or the real one? Real? Then I'll need access to your internal MA database and the last 3 years of their vendor contracts. He nodded once. Mercer will set it up. As he walked out, Catherine leaned toward me, voice low. You're making a mistake thinking he's on your side. I didn't look at her. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to win. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We'll see how long that lasts. I spent the rest of the day buried in data. By the time I left, the sun was down. My phone buzzed as I stepped outside. Unknown number again. I answered, half expecting a reporter. Vivian Carter? Male voice. Clipped. Who's asking? Julian Vance's attorney. We like to discuss the nature of your relationship with Mr. Vance and any potential conflicts arising from your new position at Prescott Global. I hung up, blocked the number. Then I laughed, quiet, dry, exhausted. They were scared. Not of me. Not yet, but of what I represented. A crack in their little ecosystem. I texted Prescott one line. First draft ready Thursday. Also, Julian's lawyer called. His reply was instant. Ignore. Mercer will handle. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and kept walking. The streetlights flickered on overhead. Somewhere behind me, Prescott Tower loomed, cold, massive, indifferent, and for the first time in either life, I didn't feel small next to it. I felt like I belonged. The email landed at 6:03 a.m. Subject line, Academic Integrity Review, urgent. I read it twice while the coffee machine gurgled behind me. Someone had filed a formal complaint alleging portions of my capstone mirrored published research from a Wharton grad student in 2019. Attached was a side-by-side comparison, shoddy highlighting, cherry-picked phrases, the usual amateur hit job. I didn't panic. In my last life, I'd spent 3 days drafting a defensive memo, looping in professors, begging for hearings. This time, I opened my cloud drive, pulled the version history time-stamped 2 weeks before that Wharton paper went live, and forwarded the whole chain to Mercer with one line. Receipts attached. His reply came before I finished my first sip. Prescott Legal is CC'd. Sit tight. Easy to say. Harder to do when Julian cornered me by the elevators an hour later. All fake concern and expensive cologne. Viv, Jesus, he said, lowering his voice. I heard about the plagiarism thing. Is it true? No, I said, hitting the button for the 44th floor. And you already knew that. I'm just saying, if you'd stuck with me, none of this would be happening. My dad's got people who can make this go away. I don't need your dad's people. I've got mine. He stepped closer. You think Prescott's going to protect you forever? He drops people the second they're inconvenient. Ask Sloane's cousin. He sat on the board for 6 months before Lincoln froze him out. Noted, I said as the doors opened. Now move. He didn't. You're making a mistake. Viv, you're not one of them. You're a charity case with a decent pitch deck. I looked him dead in the eye. And you're a cautionary tale with a trust fund. Get out of my way. He finally stepped aside, but his voice followed me into the elevator. You'll come crawling back. They always do. I didn't dignify that with response. On the 44th floor, Mercer was waiting. He fell into step beside me without a word and led me into a glass-walled conference room. Prescott was already there, reviewing a printed stack of documents. He didn't look up until I sat down. The timestamps are bulletproof, Mercer said, sliding a tablet toward him. Her working drafts predate the Wharton paper by 17 days. Metadata confirms no postdating. Prescott scanned the screen, then looked at me. Why didn't you come to me yesterday? Because I didn't need to. I said, I knew I was clean. Running to you every time someone throws a rock isn't strategy. It's noise. A beat of silence. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Fair. Mercer cleared his throat. The complaint originated from an anonymous Proton Mail account routed through a VPN. But the language in the attachment matches phrasing used in a Sternbridge faculty memo last month. Narrow pool. Sloane Armitage's uncle sits on the board. I added. And her older brother graduated Wharton in 2018. Prescott's gaze sharpened. You research them. I research everyone. I said, comes with the territory. He leaned back, steepled his fingers. Most people would sue. Or cry. You don't do either. I'd rather win. Good, he said. Then sue them. I blinked. What? File a formal complaint for defamation and tortious interference. Use our counsel. Make it loud enough that the board has to distance themselves. He paused. Or you can ignore it and let them think you're weak. I thought about it for half a second. I'll sue. Mercer will coordinate with legal. You'll approve the filings, not draft them. Understood? Understood. Over the next 2 days. The machine moved. Subpoenas went out. IT logs were pulled. And somewhere in the middle of it, Mercer intercepted a call, Julian, offering a Sternbridge janitor $500 for any emails Carter sent from the library computers. Mercer recorded it. Clean. Admissible. He played it for Prescott and me in a closed session Thursday afternoon. Julian's voice. Cocky and careless. She's nothing. 500 now. Another $1,000 if you find something I can use. Prescott didn't react. He just looked at me. Your move. Let it leak. I said, quietly, to the right people. He nodded once. Done. Friday morning. Dean Whitmore summoned me to his office. He looked like he'd aged a year and 5 days. Vivian, this situation is unfortunate. Perhaps it's best if you take a brief leave of absence while the investigation. There is no investigation. I said, there's a smear campaign. And I'm not going anywhere. The board is under pressure. Then tell the board that Prescott Global doesn't negotiate with saboteurs. Or I will. He paled. I left before he could respond. That afternoon, Prescott called a mandatory all-hands on the 44th floor. No agenda sin. No warning. Just an Outlook invite stamp priority. He stood at the front, hands in his pockets. Voice flat. Earlier this week, someone tried to discredit a member of this team. They use lies, proxies, and money. That stops now. He didn't name Julian. Didn't mention Sloane. Didn't need to. The room was dead silent. Prescott Global doesn't tolerate rats. He continued. We're cowards. If you have a problem with someone, bring it to me. Do it through the proper channels. Go around, and you're done. No references. No severance. No second chances. He let that hang for a full 5 seconds. Then, back to work. People scattered like roaches. I stayed put, gathering my notes. Prescott didn't leave. He stood there, watching the room empty, until only Mercer and I remained. Then, for the first time since I'd known him, he spoke without an audience. "You handled it well," he said. "I didn't enjoy it." I replied, "You don't have to enjoy survival. You just have to win." He paused, glancing at the floor-to-ceiling windows. I learned that the hard way. 20 years ago, I had a partner. We built our first company out of a garage in Jersey. He signed over our IP to a competitor the night before close. Said it was just business. I didn't sue. I bought the competitor 6 months later and shut it down. Then I blackballed him so thoroughly he ended up selling insurance in Bakersfield. He looked at me then. "You remind me of myself. Before the noise." I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Mercer shifted slightly. Prescott noticed. "That's all." "Mercer." He left. We were alone. "I'm not you," I said finally. "No." Prescott agreed. "You're smarter. You didn't wait for someone to stab you in the back before learning how to watch it." He walked to the door, then stopped. "Monday, 7 a.m. Don't be late." "Wouldn't dream of it." He left. I stayed, staring at the table. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Sternbridge suspends Julian Vance pending academic misconduct review. I didn't click it. Didn't need to. Outside, the city was still moving. Inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just a girl who'd been reborn. I was the girl who'd survived the first strike. And I was just getting started. I woke up to the alert chime I trained myself to recognize. Prescott level urgency. 6:12 a.m. Not Mercer. Not a calendar invite. An actual text. From him. Media cycle spinning. "Don't engage. We'll talk at 7. I swung my legs out of bed, already reaching for my phone to scan the damage. New York Business Journal had a short piece buried in the Metro section. Sternbridge fellow under scrutiny. Van's family heir suspended amid allegations. Nothing explicit about me, but the implication was a neon sign. Social was worse. Sloane Armitage's Instagram was suddenly private. Her last public story, still cached on a gossip blog, showed Julian at some dimly lit bar, looking like he hadn't slept. The caption was gone, but the comments were brutal. I didn't post, didn't like, didn't even refresh. I dressed, grabbed my bag, and headed out. The subway was its usual chaos, but I barely registered it. My brain was already in the conference room. At Prescott Tower, Mercer met me at the elevator, tablet in hand. He's in early. Catherine Reeves already here. So is Dean Whitmore. Great. I said, "A party. He wants you in the small conference room." Now, I pushed through the doors. Prescott was at the head of the table, reading a printout of the NYBJ article. He didn't look up, closed the door. I did. Saturday. Waited. "You talked to Whitmore yesterday," he said, tone neutral. Briefly, he suggested a leave of absence. I declined. Good. He finally looked at me. Most people fold under that kind of pressure. They start apologizing for things they didn't do. You didn't. Apologizing wouldn't make it true. No, but it would make you look weak. Perception is a weapon. Right now, the perception is that you're either a liar or a victim. I don't hire either. I held his gaze. Which one am I? Neither. You're a problem solver. And right now, I have a bigger problem than a spoiled rich kid and his trust-funded girlfriend. He slid a thin folder across the table. Not the fellowship contract. Something else. The fellowship was a test. He said, "This is the real offer. Special projects group. High-risk acquisitions. Internal audits. Competitive intelligence. You report to me. You answer to no one else. Salary doubles. Equity triples. And you learn how to dismantle companies before they realize they're already dead." I opened the folder. The non-compete clause was savage. The confidentiality agreement could choke a whale. And the scope of work was deliberately vague, by design. I assumed. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you chose yourself," he said, leaning back. "That's rarer than talent. Most people wait for permission. You didn't. You saw the board, saw the pieces, and moved. I respect that. I can use that. And Catherine Reeve? She's a gatekeeper. Sees you as a threat to her succession plan. She'll try to bury you in paperwork, starve you of resources, feed you bad data. Let her try. You're not going to stop her? No, he said, voice flat. If I fight every battle for you, they'll never fear you. I don't protect you. Carter, I make you into someone they can't afford to touch. I process that. Let it settle. Understood. Sign, he said, pushing a pen across the table. We got a board meeting in 20 minutes. You'll sit in, observe, say nothing unless I ask you directly. And if Catherine tries to corner you afterward, remember, she's not your friend. She's not your mentor. She's a rival. Act accordingly. I signed. He didn't look at the signature, just closed the folder and stood. Let's go. The boardroom was colder than the rest of the floor. Polished table, floor-to-ceiling windows, and a dozen faces that could buy and sell small nations before breakfast. Catherine Reeve was already seated near the middle, scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up when I entered. Prescott took a seat at the head. I stood behind the chair to his right, close enough to hear, far enough to be invisible. For now, Dean Whitmore was there, too, looking profoundly uncomfortable in a chair near the back. He avoided my eyes. The meeting was dry. Quarterly earnings, risk assessments, regulatory updates, until Prescott steered it toward the logistics firm I'd been analyzing. Carter, he said, not looking at me. Your preliminary findings on Meridian Logistics. Every head turned. Catherine's phone finally lowered. I stepped forward, opening my tablet. Meridian's debt-to-EBITDA ratio is unsustainable past Q3. I said, keeping my voice even. Their last two contracts were won by underbidding by at least 15%. They're bleeding cash to maintain market share. Leadership is stagnant. CEO hasn't adapted the fleet in 4 years. And there's a pending class action from former franchise operators in Ohio. If we acquire, we inherit that liability unless we structure the deal as an asset purchase with specific indemnification clauses. I paused. No one spoke. Recommendation. I continued. Is a phase buy-in. 10% equity stake now. Option to acquire remaining 90 within 18 months contingent on litigation outcome and fleet modernization. We control the downside while keeping the upside. Prescott nodded once. Thank you. I stepped back. The board moved on, but I could feel Catherine's eyes on me. Cold, calculating. After the meeting, as people filed out, she lingered, waiting. I gathered my things slowly, deliberately. Ambitious, she said, voice low, once we were alone, for a girl who was nearly expelled last week. Nearly. I echoed, past tense. Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. Lincoln burns through protégés faster than he signs them. Ask the last 3 people who sat in that chair. I'm not them, I said, and I'm not auditioning for a eulogy. Her smile was thin. We'll see how you handle a real workload. I've got 3 projects I'm reassigning to special projects. Consider it your welcome gift. Send them over. I said, I'll have Mercer prioritize. She didn't like that. Her jaw tightened, but she turned and walked out without another word. Prescott was waiting by the elevators. He didn't ask how it went. He didn't need to. You handled her, he said as the doors opened. She's predictable. Good. Predictable people are easy to counter. He stepped into the elevator. I followed. Mercer will send the first dossier tonight. Read it. Tear it apart. And remember, this isn't about winning arguments. It's about owning the outcome. The doors closed. We rode in silence down to lobby. As I stepped out, he spoke one last time. Don't let them make you small. Carter. I turned back. They won't. He nodded. The doors slid shut. Outside, the sun was higher now, reflecting off the glass towers. My phone buzzed, a notification from a financial news app. Prescott Global expands internal task force. Promotes Sternbridge Fellow to key role. I didn't click it. Didn't need to. Last time, I'd spent my days waiting for someone to choose me. Julian, my professors. Even Lincoln. Eventually, this time, I'd chosen myself. And in choosing myself, I'd ended up exactly where I needed to be. Not behind him, not beneath him, beside him, because I'd earned the right to stand there. I walked toward the subway, already mentally dissecting Catherine's inevitable first move. She'd bury me in busy work. I'd bury her in results. She'd play politics. I'd play chess. And when the boardroom doors opened again, I wouldn't be standing behind anyone. I'd be taking my seat.